Hello everyone and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with RICS for 13 years now. I now sit within our thought leadership and analytics part of the organisation, and my role is to look at the impact of AI, data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 members working worldwide, right across that life cycle from land through planning and development, construction, brokerage, valuation, finance, building surveying, building operation, portfolio management. It's obviously a very, very rich canvas upon which AI, data and tech is having a profound effect. And indeed, our members work across all the major asset types as well. So land itself, residential, commercial, alternative assets and infrastructure. And today I'm really glad to have Alessio join me from ScanSan. So welcome to the discussion, Alessio.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Alessio Scannicchio, founder and CEO of ScanSan. We tokenize residential properties here in London. At the same time, to create this amazing platform, we use our AI behind the scenes to make sure the data that we collect, the aggregation, we clean the data, we categorize it, we give insights to our customers and to landlords that they want to acquire new properties. Run ScanSan since July 2022, and the plan is to expand. At the moment, we are in London, and the plan is to expand across all the UK.
Indeed. Well, I think for once the roles are reversed today, aren't they, Alessio? And I think you're going to be interrogating me. So you have the floor, as they say.
Yes, the plan is, so I gently ask Andrew to participate to this interview, because on our website, ScanSan website, we create every week blog post fully related to AI. We are going to go live with a product that is a property assistant for agents that help agents to research more and quick and faster any information about any areas here in London. And I said to myself, why not? Let's have a chat with Andrew. Let's spread this knowledge, all the knowledge that Andrew and RICS have with everyone, and let's make this AI topic more interesting and less scary. Yes, so I've got 10 questions, but we can look into and jump between questions quite easily. I know we will touch amongst all the 10 questions, but most important, let's start with, at the moment, what we have is AI is a topic inside everyone's mind. Everyone is talking about AI. We had the previous chat, me and you, Andrew, about AI and how AI was using way before, not into with punch cards, but just later about punch cards. We would like to know and let our readers know, how is AI currently used in real estate from RICS perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good place to start, because I think it's also worth perhaps kind of unwinding all the hype and excitement around generative AI, which obviously has been very much in people's minds over the last 18 months or so with the rise of these various tools. And I think for me, although people are obviously using generative AI, it is interesting to reflect on the fact that machine learning, particularly in various forms, has been now very pervasive and is being used across most of the property life cycle, and has been for a number of years now. So I think in some respects, generative AI has certainly brought it very much into the front of people's minds. But if I reflect on the people I talk to across this tech partner network, there are people using AI to interpret images of rewilding and re-wriggling rivers, counting trees, looking at from that land perspective around crop management and quality of soil. When you look at the kind of moving through the property life cycle, if you look at the whole kind of area of planning development, a lot of kind of very powerful AI tools bringing together data sets to give you that really powerful kind of geospatial view with overlays of title information and environment agency information, flood risk, etc., etc. If you look at the construction phase, people are using it to help with taking quantities of 2D and 3D drawings. You've got people using it to actually schedule complex construction projects. So, it's really a story where AI is already with us, particularly that machine learning piece, We'll talk probably later about automated valuation in all its forms, but also people using it to extract information from unstructured documents, whether that's rent roll, other kind of documents, people using it for building management in terms of optimizing their HVAC. So I think it's really becoming very pervasive and quite often under the hood, to use that expression, under the bonnet, just part of a solution there. And if we think of building surveying, perhaps to finish off this topic, a lot of people now using drones to both collect data on defects, but also have those photographs effectively tagged by a surveyor so that the machine learning can identify defects in the photographs those drones take. So I would summarize it as being fairly pervasive right all over across the property and land life cycle, but quite often simply part of a solution, part of the toolkit that people use to build their solutions.
Yes, indeed. It's really interesting how AI and ML has been used and is being used. In the past, I think everyone is looking at AI now, but in the past we did had some interesting situation where we were using AI, ML to analyze data. It's just that no one probably knew that someone was using it already. Now, addressing these and seeing how everyone is using now AI, can you recognize few challenges that AI is not addressing, because we have seen the AI is using it as a solution, but the challenge the proper company are having with using AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way of answering that is almost to talk about the challenges and the opportunities of how we can use AI, because as you know, Alessio, AI broadly needs data to be trained and to operate. And I think one of the biggest challenges and opportunities for the whole real estate sector is both the lack of data in some instances, or the fact that data is hidden away in documents, and therefore some of the barriers to using AI is the lack of data at scale, at quality, and with a good understanding of its provenance. And yet, ironically, AI can be part of that solution by helping us turn unstructured data into more structured data, or indeed complement perhaps smaller data sets that participants in the market might have with other data sets that can then help them use AI. So it's a slightly kind of, I think in a good way, a circular discussion here, where the lack and an issue around the lack of digital data in a really good form is holding us back in terms of some of the kind of applications of AI, but AI itself can be part of the solution by helping us build better curated data sets that then AI can reliably make decisions on.
Yes, and it's true. I remember last week when we talked at the University of Sheffield, we were talking about the quality of data. That unfortunately AI, is all related to the data, as you were saying, that you inject in, and that shows if you inject good, clean, quality data, then you will have a good results. If instead the data that you inject in are not that good quality, let's say, then the end result that we offer to our clients is not going to be that great as the clients they expect. Yes, very true. When we talked about data and the amount of the data that we need to inject, I found myself in a situation yesterday that somebody was asking me, I would like to create this AI, and they were going into a solution without really understand the amount of data that they need to inject in to create AI, because creating AI perhaps for somebody can be easy, quote unquote, but is from where you're going to get those data. So when we are looking at analyzing those data, do you know if there are technologies or methodologies that are effective in real estate as analyzing the data, and which one is the most effective one that you feel is good for people to use it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say that there are so many methodologies here, and I suppose it's worth perhaps talking and helping our listeners understand some of the differences between the different flavors of machine learning, because obviously on one extent, as you know, you can have that supervised machine learning where the domain experts are working very closely with the development of the model to give it the both the inputs and the outputs to help it understand how to learn and interpret that data. And obviously that can be really, really effective if you've got the relevant information. And I suppose examples here are some forms of automated valuation where you can use that approach, and also for kind of image recognition, where you're once again either trying to identify assets or for building asset registers within buildings, or once again, as I mentioned earlier, that kind of defect identification. So, I think those can be really, really useful. I think also, if we think of smart buildings as a use case where you do get very large amounts of data coming from those buildings, and thinking perhaps more of an unsupervised approach where you're looking for correlations, you're looking for patterns. There's clearly situations in real estate where we do have large volumes of data, and they fall into that kind of big data type situation where actually you need the analytical power of AI in various forms to actually absorb and actually interpret that information in real time to turn that data into information and insight. So I think analysis can be very, very powerful when you have those large data sets, and also where you are trying to spot patterns and categorize data where it's simply too large. Thinking again of an example of the construction sector, which I mentioned earlier, where you're looking at developing scheduling for large infrastructure and construction projects, where just the sheer number of options is really too large for human beings to analyze and give the kind of feedback and options of what's possible for large projects. So once again, I think you do have instances where you have these large data sets, and therefore the analysis is very useful because it goes beyond what a human being can do. So yeah, I think that there's some really, really effective approaches, both in terms of these kind of unsupervised and indeed supervised machine learning approaches, and that's without even thinking about perhaps some of the new things that generative AI can do. But once again, focusing on the very kind of mature AI that's already out there, we do have situations where we have data sets which are of the scale and of the quality that they can really help us develop decision making that we as human beings just wouldn't have the capacity to do.
It's really interesting that you touch, thank you so much, the supervising ML, because we have certain scenario and situations. I know now I'm going a little bit out of what are the questions. A certain scenario and situation where you have to label, for example, transactions. So you have to label whatever happens and it comes through up until a certain time where ML start to gain quote unquote traction on what they are doing. Basically, the margin of error gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So even in these aspects, I published one blog post, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, related to don't be scared about AI because it's going to enhance our skills. And of course, it's not going to take our job out as long as we learn about AI and we stay up to date. In my previous company, we were using a lot of new junior people or developer as an introduction into the company as a labelers, because in that way they were learning more about the company. They were getting to how the company works, how the team works, and how you can integrate yourself within the team. So I can see how AI as well open up that small window where if we didn't have that side, we wouldn't bring new junior person in because we literally didn't have any job available for them. So it's interesting. Now, if we are looking, we have been talking about AI, Gen AI, and how ML works, supervised and unsupervised. If we are looking at how RICS is adapting us on this new era, Do you see any possibilities where RICS can adopt AI, or does RICS adopting AI already?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question in the sense that we have to be very aware that not only do we have a role to lead our profession and educate our profession and look at how AI might affect the way our standards operate in terms of the way our members are working in their various practice areas. But we've also got, as an organization, a responsibility to look at AI and see where that can help us run our organization more efficiently and provide better service. And I guess one of the things that we always have to think about when we talk about AI in all its forms for the built environment is that our members are working in businesses in a general sense, and therefore AI wasn't just written for built environment, it was written for many business purposes. So we've got to sort of step back and begin that journey and think, well, where can AI help us? And certainly I've got some personal views about where I think we can begin to use it, and I think in many respects the kind of things I've been thinking about personally is around how we can be using it for perhaps sentiment analysis to understand the way the market's actually moving, the way our members are being viewed in terms of interaction with their clients. I think it's interesting to think about how we could start to use perhaps an in-house large language model that would be able to curate our standards, to curate legislation and other kinds of information around our competency frameworks to help people get qualified. So I could see a situation where we could particularly use those large language models to give natural language interfaces to all the sort of various topics that our standards cover, that legislation cover, that help people, as I say, become qualified around our competency framework. And I think there's real value there in understanding how we turn what is a very large suite and canon of standards and guidance information into an even more elegant portal where people can really kind of probe and get quality, trusted information. Because clearly, as you know, the kind of general public domain large language models, do have issues around hallucination, and arguably that there's a degree of understandable mistrust in some of the output they might produce. So we have a role, I think, to be the opposite of that, which is to produce that trusted information. So I think for us, that's certainly one of the areas I'd like to look at, is how we can use large language models to curate and provide a trusted interface to that large set of data that we hold around practice information, standards, guidance, etc.
Yes, it's interesting how while you was talking, I was going through the questions that we have, and it pops out the question related to the ethical consideration that are connected with AI integration. And then my brain started to work more into biases and what can happen. And then I had to stop myself, come back. So related to ethical consideration, is there anything that RICS is looking to implement or integrate with AI? Perhaps we can talking not just in the next few months, but I'm talking about next year or 3 years, because we heard yesterday, a couple of days ago, where Elon Musk was saying that by 2029 we will have AI integrated into our life, and is as much as smooth way as possible that is going to helping us to move forward. So how does RICS approach ethical consideration in AI integration?
Yeah, it's a really important point for us to consider here for the profession, because I think for me this, as well as ethics, I think it's also around the kind of the perhaps collision is the wrong word, but the intersection between technology in general and obviously AI specifically, and the real world that our members operate, where they're giving reasoned advice to organizations as their clients, to consumers, private individuals, and therefore we obviously have a responsibility in terms of the public interest to provide a profession that can be trusted and is reliable and protect that public interest. And I think one of the big challenges for AI particularly is both its ethical dimension in terms of AI being used for good, in the sense that whilst that's an obvious comment, you know, we do need to make sure that our members think through that whilst it might be technically possible to use AI in a certain context, that we need to decide that both in the context of the built environment, or indeed the way they run their business generally, is it an ethical application to use AI in that particular way, whether that might be the recruitment process, other kind of processes where there's clearly a high risk in terms of the kind of stakeholders that are affected. And if you look at the EU directive that's moving through that process, that they have a very kind of risk-based model where clearly the amount of regulation from their perspective is very much based on the risk, the impact on the stakeholders affected. And I think we would take a similar view in terms of understanding and guiding our members to understand the kind of potential impact on the stakeholders affected by decisions. I think another area is around the kind of and you'll be very familiar with the kind of white box, black box type issue of explainability and transparency, where clearly our members are providing reasoned advice to their clients, whether it's around valuation or early cost advice in construction or other options. And clearly they need to be able to explain how they've reached their opinion, how they've reached the point where they can offer that advice or that set of options. And I think it will be difficult in the real world to do that if we don't have some sense of how the models are working, the kind of source data they use, some sense of explainability, to use that word, in terms of understanding how a model has come to a particular conclusion, so that our members can have confidence in what that model is producing as outcomes, and indeed they can explain that to their clients, and perhaps defend is the wrong word, but can explain the rationale between around the decision that they've come to and the advice they're giving. So I think it's around, once again, helping our members understand the risk factors, the stakeholders who might be affected by decisions that are taken by AI, and then addressing that real world issue of explainability and transparency. But once again, putting that into the context of risk, because one could imagine a situation where you have some machine learning that's running your HVAC in your building. It might be quite a black box approach, but if it's saving you money, if it's making sure that everybody's at the right temperature and the right air quality, it may not be such a high risk issue to not be able to understand necessarily the exact algorithmic approach that machine learning is using. So it's I think a matter of risk, understanding the impact, and then understanding how important it is to be able to have that explainability and that transparency.
Yes, very, very true. I do believe that we shouldn't just use AI and just accept anything that comes with it. We should understand what is behind, even though there are maybe some people they think is too complicated and they feel they will never understand. My suggestion is just try. Whenever you have a situation where somebody is using or is telling you that is using AI to create all of these, just probe in, ask questions, because at the end of the day, we were before in the world where software engineers, they were creating a platform from scratch, and they knew if there was a problem, an error, they knew what to fix. Now with all of these hidden layers, what's happening is that software engineers, they rely on AI to create perhaps some solutions, and they don't know if something goes wrong, they don't know where to tweak. So they start to change to see then the outcome and the output, and then try to get closer and closer to what the solutions they think is best, or they think it works best. But at the end of the day, there is not anymore as before, like we change a small function within our I don't want to get into too technical jargon, but you know, we don't want just to change one function and solve the problem, but we need to really on the end understand the AI. So talking about understanding, is there anything that RICS is working on to educate members or tech partners? Is there anything that RICS is looking forward to create an education path where any tech member can take on and learn more about AI?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly we're in a continual process of looking at our training portfolio, our CPD offerings, what we talk about at our conferences. So it's that's a continual journey for us, because obviously technology in many ways has been changing and adapting and being made available to the profession over the decades. So for us, this is a constant journey of making sure our members are aware of how the landscape of their profession is evolving and changing. And we'll be doing, as we already do, speaking at many events, speaking at RICS CPD events, talking at our conferences about AI and data and technology in general, and we certainly have a continual program of updating our various training offerings. So for us, that's a continual journey to help people understand the technologies that are out there, and I think particularly referring back to my earlier point, I think the rise of generative AI over this last 18 months or so has been very useful, in the sense that we see a lot of members now actively seeking out information, wanting to know, asking for presentations. So many of the presentations I do at the conferences are really driven by our engagement teams understanding that member groups want to hear more about this. So I have the pleasure of a very enjoyable part of my job is to go out and talk to our members and talk about AI, and almost start from the basics to explain some of the jargon, because like any technology, it has its jargon. We've talked about supervised machine learning and all these things, and for me, it's not about the profession becoming data scientists necessarily, but it is getting an understanding for them about what the different approaches of machine learning are, what generative AI really means, and some of these issues around data that we've discussed, so they can become intelligent customers. And I think particularly for them to be able to not have to become data scientists themselves, but work with data scientists, because I think it's really important that, as you know, Alessio, that context is very important when developing AI. And if you don't have that blend of real estate domain expertise and data science expertise, if you don't smash those together in a good way, you're probably not going to get a very good model. So I think it's really important that our members in our profession engage very much with the data scientists, either in the supply chain, or if they're in a larger firm, within their internal teams, and provide that domain knowledge on what is a very complex and idiosyncratic set of asset types across a very long life cycle, to make sure that the models are developed using the right data with that right understanding. So there's a really good role here, I think, for the sector to learn about AI, not to the point where they're going to have to start writing Python themselves, but that they can actually work with the technical people and make sure that we develop AI that we can trust.
Very good. It's nice. It's nice to see how the world of real estate is getting closer and closer to the tech world, because I think what we have now is we are now in 2024, and the innovation and the progress that we are going through is going to somehow change our life in better, and making us using our time, perhaps giving us time back to what we were using before to do manual research. Now we can instead, we talked before, AI can analyze big amount of data that for a human would take, I don't know, weeks, but AI can take probably a couple of seconds. And we talked, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about ScanSan looking to become a RICS regulated automated, having a RICS regulated automated valuation process. And you gently say and explain to me the process that will involve. I was thinking perhaps we can let our listener know if that can be the case even for them. What I'm looking in here is having a tech partner, RICS tech partners, that we help each other. So anything that I might know or my company have as a knowledge, we can help another tech partner to increase their knowledge. So then all of us, we can increase the quality of the solutions that we give to our clients and customers. So looking at potential RICS automated evaluation process, can we explain to our listeners if there is a process, if there is what they can expect, and what could be the output of it?
Indeed, yeah, no, and it's a very interesting area, because I did a lot of work during the pandemic actually around automated valuation models and the relationship between ourselves and standards, because obviously the valuation space is a particularly kind of regulated area in terms of what we call valuer registration, as well as being RICS members. There's an extra layer there in terms of the way our members and firms operate in that valuation space, because of the importance both for consumers when it's residential valuation, or the capital markets, lenders, insurers, etc., when you're looking at commercial real estate. And I think that the way we've approached that is very much be fairly clear that a purely fully automated process doesn't fall within the red book in terms of IVS and the red book. What is something that people are increasingly looking at is effectively having an automated valuation process as part of an overall valuation process, but then having an in-house valuer who then signs off that final work product, that final opinion, using the AVM as an input, but with that human in the loop, to use the AI phrase. So certainly I've seen situations where people are using AVMs as part of an overall evaluation process, but they can become RICS regulated by having by becoming a regulated firm, by having an RICS member as part of their team, who's then able to say use the AVM as an input, then use their judgment and professional expertise to produce that final valuation number, which they can sign off as a red book valuation. So it's a kind of a subtle but very important layer, if I can use that phrase, where AVMs will increasingly, I think, be part of the valuation process, but as an input to that final valuation, which is still signed off, to use the phrase, by an RICS valuer. And so therefore it has that red book wrapper, if I can use a vernacular phrase, so that the AVM is an input to the valuation process. And I think particularly also that AVM has to have that level of explainability, because once again, if a valuer is going to use that input to then provide their final opinion of value, they need to have the understanding of the kind of comparable evidence, the kind of data that's been used to drive that model, how that model is calibrated with either asking price or other kind of transactional information, depending on the market. So there's certainly instances I know where people are now using an AVM as part of a red book process, but it's very much that it's an input to a valuer, who then does a valuation with the AVM as one of their inputs, but with that understanding of the nature of the model, the nature of the information, the nature of the comparable evidence. So they're producing a valuation, but having the AVM as one of the inputs for them.
Yes, yes, we have that model where we still need to have, and I think is really important to have a person, a human, there is the supporting the AVM, and making sure that each person knows what they're doing. Each person knows that if they want to use the AVM, for example, with Property Assistant that we have on Telegram, people are using it for free, and for us is important to give that service for free, because we feel in a scenario where you want to get an understanding of what is happening, then you don't need to research on Google if you are not an estate agent. And the same with the AVM, not making that that price, because at the end of the day, the person wants to see the valuation, the end solution, and they say, right, I received this solution, this is the valuation, I'm going with that valuation. I think that is not the right thing to say. Now you have a valuation, you have an understanding of what the property is valued, but you still need to have RICS valuer that comes, see the property, understand if the foundations are there, understand if everything is stable within the property, inside, how it is inside. You know, there are so many different aspects that an AVM won't be able to capture.
Exactly.
That is important to have a human there. Nice, fantastic. Yes, I don't want to make it this 1 hour long. I think our listener, they do have a lot of knowledge of what we have been talking. I think they receive a lot of technical terms, small little technical terms that they can research if they want to. That fulfill my aim that was giving back to the community some knowledge that me and you, Andrew, we have, and then at the same time let people know that RICS is there to supporting us, and let us know that everything that we want to do with the properties is feasible, is doable, but we still need to have an RICS value to go into that specific valuation.
Indeed.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, and I think I suppose the last thing I would add is just for our listeners to continue to be curious, to seek out information on AI. You know, I think it's important that our profession embraces this technology, understands the opportunities and some of the risks and how they need to be managed. But I think it's about remaining curious, seeking out, you know, videos like this, blogs like you're going to write, and just, you know, immersing themselves in the time they have spare from their day job just to learn about and not be frightened of the jargon. And as I say, I think they have an important role both to use this technology, but also to work with the people who are developing it to make sure they get AI that's really useful and they can trust it.
Nice, brilliant. Andrea, thank you so much for enlightening us with your knowledge. And thank you, RICS, for giving you the time to doing this interview. Really appreciate you taking time off, quote unquote. And I hope I will see you soon.
Indeed, pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.